What's up, guys? You are about to see a special edition of our Tin Soldier Racecars podcast. It's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. This one probably means a little bit more to me than most of them. It's a sit down with our buddy Joren. Joren was Brad and I's first ever employee that we had. So we go over a lot of really funny stories that happened in the early years. Just you'll get a really great insight of what made us us. And Brad and I were growing up, and Joran was definitely growing up. He's like a 19-year-old kid at the time. So you're going to really enjoy it. And then it's going to get into what Joran is currently doing. So basically, the first one you're going to see is going to drop today, the 26th. And then tomorrow, the 27th, we're going to drop a continuation of our conversation. The continuation part of it is where it's definitely going to get a little bit more of what Joran's doing now. Just full disclosure, Joran is a missionary. So it's really interesting of how that world works, how you can help him. We're going to get into all that. And we talk a lot about Christianity, a Christianity worldview, what Christianity looks like with boots on the ground. So like what I say all the time, you do not have to believe to belong. You can think about it however you want. I just ask, come into it with an open mind, and just hear his story, because it's a fantastic one. And however you think, however you believe, I promise you can absolutely be encouraged by what Joran has to say and how he does it. It's beautiful. So we love you. Enjoy this 2-part podcast. As always, like, share, subscribe. Enjoy. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of our Tin Soldier Tuesday podcast. What did you title this deal, Rick?
I think just Tin Soldier Tuesday.
I thought you had another title for it.
Yeah, we can still work that out.
So this is my good friend, our good friend, Joran, that you may or may not know who he is. We used to call him the Mustache Man.
Still kind of there.
Yeah, it's there a bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's more subtle.
Yeah. So we're hoping to knock out a couple of these while he's here. He currently lives in Australia, and he does a lot of things with mission work, and works for an organization called YWAM. We may or may not get into that on this one, but maybe the next one. But yeah, we just wanted to reintroduce you to who he is. He was our first, and I don't even know if we can call you an employee, I guess.
Volunteer.
Yeah. He's the first person other than Brad and I that worked at Tin Soldier Racecars. He actually was full-time before Brad was.
That's right.
So I was going into our first little shop without a lot of direction every day. And I'll kind of let Joran tell his side of that story, but yeah, he was the first one to kind of come and be like, "I'm going to help you." And yeah, we had some times, but so yeah, we want to share a bit of the background, and then I'll fill in some of it, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I've known Jason since I was 13, and yeah, I was 19. I was painting houses, and it sucked. And I was like, I have to do something in my life. I have to do something other than painting houses. And so I wanted to learn how to weld, tried to go to welding school. It was like a year and a half wait.
He was also broken. We both share a love of motocross. That's how our relationship started. He was a little bit younger than me, so I picked him up to go riding, and then it had something to do with his first car. We might even get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you were hurt. He was hurt, so he couldn't ride his dirt bike, so he had no direction in life.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to make it in dirt bikes, and I didn't. And then I broke my ankle racing, and then had about 6 months, 7 months, somewhere around there, of trying to figure out what to do, just limping around, started painting houses. In the meantime, that sucked. And so I decided I wanted to weld. Like I said, welding school didn't have any openings. I didn't want to go to college, so I went to Jason and asked if I could work for him in exchange to use the equipment to weld. And then that's kind of where it started. And yeah, and then I kind of was like a full-time volunteer.
Yeah.
I think we agreed, and then eventually I got hired. And then I was like 19, and I think we agreed on $60 a day plus lunch. And that was just flat rate. Didn't matter how long we were there.
Yeah, back then, dude. Like, to give like more perspective, you're like, how did you only pay the kid $60 a week? But at the time, Brad and I weren't getting paid at all. I don't think so. We didn't. I mean, we had no money, bro. Like, it was really like, people see it now, and you're like, dude, you don't get it. Like actually, a memory today on my Facebook. 8 years ago today, you were cutting apart a Mustang for the first time.
Yeah, I mean that was like most of what we did. Like, I didn't have any skills, so it was just kind of like I just got a grinder and the blue disc to strip the glue, and that was just all I did all day. And I remember the plasma cutter was like the best thing ever.
Yeah, we didn't have the money for a plasma cutter, and then I think Brad worked out a trade deal with a buddy, and we got this plasma cutter, and it saved Jordan's life.
And then there was only like 2 cars in the shop, so Jason would just have me do things in the meantime, like rebuild his dirt bike, or like Brad, these people would bring like their motorcycle with some broken something, and I'd fix it because we didn't know what else to do. Yeah. Yeah,
that first shop, if I can paint like a picture of what it was. Rick actually went to the first shop.
I did.
It was down this hill, and it was at the bottom of this hill. There's like a 4-unit deal, and we were on the very end. And when they built this building, they did not think about drainage at all, like zero. So when it would rain, we would call it the Ellesmere River. It would come down and flood all in front of the shop, the side of the shop, and then we would have to go. The drain would get clogged up. So one of Joran's jobs was to go out there with no shoes on and clean out the drain so the water would go down.
Well, the owner, there was all these potholes, and instead of getting it fixed, he just thought he'd get like compacted sand, so he filled all the potholes with sand, and then it'd rain and wash all the sand down into the door and then block the drain, and so then it'd be like knee deep outside of the door, and you had to go out there in the storm, and then we'd just have to stay late. I remember one night staying late and standing at the garage door with push brooms, and all of us in a line pushing the water back as it kept trying to come in. We'd just keeping a wall going. Yeah.
And then the people next to us, they cut grass, and they, like, because of the flooding problem, it smelled like moldy grass all the time, right? It was terrible.
And the shop was so skinny that you had to climb over the cars to get to the bathroom. And we didn't have a plunger, so if someone clogged the toilet, you had to get a stick. It was messed up.
It sounds so medieval.
Tough times.
That was where I started drinking coffee. I didn't even like coffee, but Jason would make it every day, so he'd hand me a cup, and it had like metal, the coffee. So it'd have like all the grinding dust because there's no separation, so it'd have all the grinding dust in it. And I just started, I don't know why I did it. I just would power through it. Like, this is what you do now. You drink coffee.
With metal in it, we're going to become men.
I was like, if this is what I want to weld, so I guess I'm going to drink coffee.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
It was, that season of life, man, like, back then, I was an industrial welder, and then, we started this. So I would get there at like 6 a.m. every day, and Joran would get there right with me, and Brad had worked at Cincy Speed, so he would get off at like 3. So, Brad would tell me and Joran everything we did wrong up until the point that he got there. It's fair, right?
Yeah, we'd realize we're pretty impulsive. Me and Jason are pretty similar. And so we just kind of start cutting things, and just more is better.
Brad would get there, what did you guys do? And the days that we worked back then, like, we would get there at 6 or 7, and then, pretty much every night we were there until 10 or 11 o'clock. Yeah. Every night, just making it happen. And Joran eventually learned how to weld.
Yeah, slowly. I had this pile in the back because I'd cut all the cars apart, And I had this pile that Joran's I want to be a welder pile. And so I'd cut all the scrap metal off and put it in the back corner, and then when the boys would leave, I'd stay after and try and weld it all together. Which in hindsight was good, but also like maybe wasn't the best way to start because it was all like contaminated metal and painted, and so when you don't know how to weld, you're like, what the heck's happening right now? But I eventually figured it out.
No, and you get that journey of the first shop, we made it through that. I think that's probably the better way to describe it. There was so many ups and downs that people don't quite understand. Like, you're trying to get a business off the ground. Brad and I are young. I was 25 or 26. Brad was 24, 25, and we knew nothing. And then we had Joran with us that, was 19. We're all in this little area trying to figure out how the heck we're going to build cars. The one thing that I don't talk about a lot is when Brad and I opened Tin Soldier Racecars, we had actually never built a race car, which probably sounds insane now. If what we've accomplished as a team is pretty unreal, and to walk into it with no background of it. So like, this is the real weird part, is we're trying to give Joran, this kid that works for us, direction, and we actually have none. We have an idea of how it should go, but we had a ball, man. We were making no money, but we had a really good time. And then Joran ended up living in my basement, so like, we saw each other. We're more family, honestly, than anything. But like, and then Brad had some circumstances happen, and he lived at the house for a while too. So we all three of us lived together,
work together, and then we get off and we go get food. We hang out together, and we come up with stupid ideas. Like, I don't know if Jason's ever told this story of turning his car into a pro mod. But I remember it was like, I don't know if we got time for this, but
yeah, we got plenty of time. It's our conversation.
We had like, I don't know, it was like 7 p.m. or something like this, and we just decided, like, it'd be really awesome, like, we should throw a chassis in Jason's 3rd gen Camaro, we should strip it out, and we should build it into like a pro mod. That'd be awesome. And like Jason said, like, this was right at the beginning, so like, didn't really probably have the experience to build a pro mod, but like,
we didn't have experience for nothing.
and then so we just, like I said, impulsive. I think Brad was telling us it was stupid, but we went to Jason's house, got his old 3rd gen, took it to the shop, and in 2 hours had everything cut out of it. We didn't even like, oh, leave that because we'll bank off of that and we'll land a tube there, anything. It was just like, we cut it all, just like more. We just went on this like frenzy, just cutting everything. And then we finished cutting and realized, how are we going to do this? And then the car ended up getting put in Ronnie's side yard for like, till now.
No, I gave it to Nicky Bobby.
Oh, sick.
But then he gave it away.
Oh, because he realized everything's gone. Yeah. That was fun.
It was fun. And so you probably you worked for us for about 1.5 years?
The first time?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's see, that was 2015. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess I went full time until I went to, where'd I go? Thoroughbred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had some guy. No, well, you went to Ellesmere Ironworks and then Thoroughbred.
Yeah, but it was right across the street, so I was sort of like doing a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
But I definitely bull less.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was Joran worked really hard, and he figured out a weld. I don't know how, through all this. Figured out how to do that, and then, you got some good skills with the grinder.
Yeah.
Then there's another fab shop up the street that made like decorative iron, and what basically the long and short of it is, he had more skills than what we could even afford to pay him. So he went to this other shop, worked there, and then that kind of started your journey of fab shop life, really.
Yeah. I went worked at decorative railing, and then I got a job with Thoroughbred, which was like more heavy structural stuff. That was awesome. And then I got a job where Jason actually worked before starting the shop. It kind of came full circle. I got a welding job at a company called Sweco, doing like stainless work, stuff like that.
Exact job. He had the same job that I had.
Yeah, which was funny because everyone knew Jason had left to do the shop, and then now I was here at Sweco welding, but I got my start at the shop that Jason left Sweco to start. So like it was this full circle, and then I worked there for a year. It was cool, but I didn't like working night shift, and wanted to change my life, and so I came back around.
Came crawling back in
the boys. They had upgraded big time by the time I came back, and yeah, and then I think that's where it was awesome in the beginning, but I feel like it got really good after
we had figured out some more stuff. We had some
Yeah.
systems in place, and so when Joran came back, we were in the shop that the shop that we had right before this one is where we were at. We had a lot more of it figured out. Kind of had more at that point when Joran came back the second time was when we were really trying to scale the car business. Like we had a lot of builds going on, different cars on chassis tables. Just there was a lot that was happening. Probably 10 to 12 cars we would be working on at once.
And that shop was full.
Yeah.
Both lifts up, 2 cars underneath.
Yeah, always doing something. We were very it was good. I think I'm really happy to hear that it was good for you, because that season for me was harder than honestly when we had the first one, So that makes me feel good that you guys didn't, I was stressed, bro. Like that was a really hard.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I loved it. I thought, because at that point, I had kind of tested the waters outside of like in normal welding life, and I was like, I didn't like it. It wasn't my style. And then to come back and be able to work on things I loved, hang out with people I loved, and then to be in the shop, and then the company was in such a cool place then because it wasn't too big. It's not too big yet, but like it was really still just a few of us, but it was like a good steady flow of work and where we're going, all these things. Like we kind of were all on the same page, it felt like.
Yeah.
And that was really cool because like it really became like almost like a safe place. Like I would just go to work, and then my favorite thing, I've told you this, my favorite thing is if getting there before anyone got there or staying after everyone left, kind of closing the doors and then just putting music on and working was like just the best place, and so that season there was always something, and I think at that level I'd gotten enough skill to where there was always something I could do. So it wasn't
you were very self-sufficient at that point.
Yeah, so when you left, it wasn't like I was like, well, I gotta be done. I knew where we were going. That's what I mean, the same page thing. I knew where we were going. I could just do it, and that was awesome just to get to just do my thing. And yeah, that was sweet.
Then and really that the part of life that Jordan's talking about for the guys, that's when Brad and I we were thinking about how we were going to totally redo everything. Like we kind of got to a point with the cars. We had really great people in place. We had you and Shrek and Jay Bird, of course. And it was the three of you, and then Brad and I. And that back then, the way the phone system worked was totally jacked up. Remember, we never answered the phone. I had a message on the machine like, hey, we're basically 2 years out on builds. If you're good with that, leave a message and I'll call you back. And that was it. Like we worked, all of us worked every day. Not that we don't work hard every day now, it's a different type of hard, but yeah, we were just nose to the grindstone every day trying to get stuff done.
Every person, the difference, I don't know now, but like the difference is that like back then every person was involved in the car. Like, now there's like, it's different roles, but like right back then, like me and you were welding on the car, like Jeremy was doing a lot of like demo work, like taking the stuff out, Jay was fitting things up, doing finish work, Brad was helping design it, like everything was like all minds into that car. And and every car we did went in that way, and we kind of knew our roles. Like, yeah, you know, like chassis stuff, like I could weld, or like, but the rear ends, turbo kits, like I kind of knew that was probably something I was gonna be doing. But then some of the other things, like the headers and stuff, like I knew that's what you'd be doing, and we just all worked really well together in that way, even though there were struggles. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was.
Well, and that part. So the second time before, we'll get into where you went, but you were probably there 2 years, right?
Well, that was before. Yeah, so that was like 2017, and I left January 2020.
So it's 3 years.
So just about, yeah,
Yeah.
2.5 years probably.
That portion of time, which now like laying it out is really interesting. I feel like that portion of time is where we really laid the foundation that we built a badass race car.
Yeah.
Like that, we worked, man, and we went out and we had a lot of cars that won championships. We had a lot of cars that won a lot of races.
Mm-hmm.
During that time is when we threw together our white car and was racing the white car, and man, I'll say it now, that car, we won more money with that car than what it cost us to race it. Like, we were getting it in all aspects, like, because we had a team behind us. And then, but, you know, obviously a business is about profitability, and like, that wasn't, like, we were making it, everything was good, but it wasn't, you're kind of looking at it and you're like, man, we're not gonna get to where we want to get to with the way that this is going, you know.
I mean, I feel like that time we were able to see how capable in every area of the car.
Yeah.
So like, we always knew you could weld good and fabricate. We knew Brad could fabricate, but like those situations, like with Section 8, we saw that like if we needed to, we could literally do everything.
Yeah.
Like, or what was needed on building a car. You know? Like, and then like be able to, like, just cars like Ghetto Sled and those ones I remember, like, that we put so much detail into, and able, like, I think, yeah, like a lot of those cars we really got to see a start to finish, where prior to that season I think it was a lot of like updates and things like that, which I know both those cars I just mentioned were to some extent just a massive update.
Yeah.
But still, like.
Well, and I think about Curtis and those guys, Curtis and Dougie. Like, I still talk to both those boys. I talked to Dougie 2 days ago for like an hour. But this is an interesting thing. Like, so you guys always hear us talk about our white car. Well, our white car was actually green when we got it, and the way that we got it was Curtis and Doug were partnered up on the Chevelle that they called the Ghetto Sled, and it needed a lot of stuff. We basically built the whole car. It started as a chassis, but for time's sake, we basically built the whole car. We traded the turbo kit on the Ghetto Sled to get our white, which was green, which Dougie's gonna hate me, but it was a horrible color green. And we traded it for that car, and all the boys helped on the car. We built it on a very, very tight budget. I'll just throw it out. We built it for like $30,000, which is nothing for a race car. We begged, bartered, and did everything, and then it went out, and we did really, really well with it. And that car helped us develop affordable parts, I think. That car, to me, even to this day, like, it made us really relatable. Like, it was just a really basic car that worked really good, and it helped us, see what our customer base would be in the parts side of stuff. So, yeah.
I mean, it showed that, like, the parts work.
Yeah.
That was kind of, because like you said, similar to like having to build a car at the beginning, then be able to see, like, can build a good car. Like, people, that's a whole car, it's working. But like, then I think the white car showed that, like, the ideas and the parts that were around, like, the combo worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, in that season, like, we all went racing together. Like, you pretty much, I mean, you didn't go to every race, but you went to a lot of them.
Yeah, it was fun.
And, yeah, we had a really good time with that thing.
I'm not good at gambling.
Yeah.
I just lost I didn't win a single dollar. It's just, every time, dude, those guys that had like a wad of like 10 grand, they saw me coming from a mile away.
I mean, sometimes I would give Joran a gambling allowance. Like, I'd give him like $100 and he'd be gone in like 10 minutes.
To be fair, though, like 2 of the bets were on so like I had no choice.
Yeah.
I remember one time when you guys like, I think you guys entered like LDR or something like that at that street race. And like, I love you guys, but I knew, I was like, they're not going to win, man. You know, like, that car that you wind up with was like crazy. But I still bet on you guys. And I was like, I can't not bet on the boys. Like,
It's a good friend.
Yeah, I mean, it was Jason's money.
That makes it a little easier, I guess.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. It was,
Yeah.
So through that season, like, right when, so Joran left, what, 2019?
2020, January 2020.
Yeah. So let's get into that. Like, obviously you love fab work. You still love fab work.
Yeah.
Why did you leave us?
Well, I mean, you know, like, I've kind of always struggled a little bit. Like, I love Kentucky. It's definitely home. But, you know, like, the kind of traditional route of, like, high school, college, or a degree, or something like this, some trade, and then your career, your house, all that, and then that's just, now you just maintain it, you know, like, you get the truck and the house, and then you work to keep having it. And I don't know, that just always, I think I was really fortunate to be young and get to be around the skate park and motocross and travel a little bit and kind of see some other options. And so, yeah, and then like when I met you guys, and like I originally met Jason at Bible study, you know, and so when I did that kind of started my journey. I guess I heard about God, but started seriously taking God serious and kind of wanting that in my life. And so what we didn't talk about in this whole going away from Tin Soldier and coming back, like, a lot of those years I also made a lot of bad choices outside of work. And yeah, that was kind of part of that. Like, part of the reason I left was I wanted money. Like, I just got real money hungry, and for some reason thought because I could make weld that I'm going to go make a lot, which you don't. But I just like, so I just started, you know, like, you know this, but like, just to recap it, like, I just started going after trying to make a lot of money. And then I think at that stage in life, I wanted God in my life, but I also just was curious what else was out there. And I started just dabbling around in other things, and I never got into, like, a lot of people get in big trouble. I never got anything crazy, just drank a lot and made dumb decisions. But so anyway, when I came back to Tin Soldier, that was also the same time that I kind of feel like I really, like, had enough of all the other stuff. Like, I had enough of I guess what the world kind of would offer. And like, another thing that's like a multi-layered thing, but another thing that happened is, like, we raced dirt bikes together, and I always wanted to race dirt bikes pro. And so the year before I came back to Tin Soldier, I got to race pro. And I remember on my last race of the season, I only did like a select few rounds through the season, but I remember on the last one, I was driving home by myself, which was interesting because usually there's always someone with me, but this one there wasn't. And I remember it was the race was over. That means, like, you know, so get ready through the winter, go down south, ride, and then try again the next year. Well, I just didn't have it. I remember driving home, like, I felt really, like, it sounds intense, but so empty of, like, man, I dreamt of doing that since I was 9 years old. And then I did it and was like, it didn't do anything. You know, obviously I didn't win. I wasn't a rock star, but, like, still I did it. And
and like, to put perspective on it, if you don't know, like, pro motocross, like, that's, you know, out of all the people that ride dirt bikes in the world, like, the percentage to make it to be pro is what, 1%?
I don't really know. I just know it was hard.
No, I didn't make it. I sucked.
Yeah. Well, so, like, I think, yeah, so accomplishing that dream really was like, wow, okay, I don't know what I did it, and it didn't solve anything. You know, you still had that same feelings, day-to-day troubles, and then so that was kind of where I started searching for other things. And like I had said, I kind of didn't really think of God much at that time, and and so I kind of got invited to church, started going to church, really started kind of taking my faith a lot more seriously. And then that was led me to come back to Tin Soldier. Like, I was so driven by getting money, by getting things prior through these years that, and accomplishing dreams, that I kind of lost sight of like nothing was doing it. And so started following Jesus kind of seriously. I would really say in the story of my life that at 21, when I made that decision, or 22, that was probably the first time in my life that I actually understood, like, okay, like Jesus is real, and I want to follow him. I don't want to do things the way I've been doing it. I actually want to take it seriously. And so that's why I was willing to like come back, because at the time I know, like we had talked, like you didn't know if you could pay me what I was making, but I was like, I don't care. Like, I just want to be around people like you that I knew would kind of fuel that. Anyway, it's a kind of big derailment, but like, so then started going to church, started really growing in my faith, and then I really feel like I sort of didn't know where to go. I sort of like, not topped out, like I had a lot to work on, but like, I was just so hungry to know some depth. I was so hungry to like, someone just like, I want to know about Jesus. Like, I want to know about Christianity. I want to understand it. I want to know about the Bible. And no, nothing against the church, but like, I feel like in a regular kind of flow of church, like there's so many people, they can't really give you that. And so I was asking around, like, I'm hungry, like what can I do? And it was kind of, the response generally was like, just be here when the doors are open. So I don't know if like you remember, like I started just being there. I just did that. I was just like, well, I remember telling you something like, might not work as much, but I promise I'll always work at least 30 hours a week. And then other than that, I was at church like every day. Like, I don't know everyone's perspective on church and what they think that looked like, but I was just doing whatever I could, cleaning up, helping run events, doing whatever I could, and that still wasn't doing it. Like, I still was like, man, this hunger is just there, and I'm not like, and so then I just started looking bigger and started wondering about mission work, like going to places where, you know, people might not know about Jesus and might not know, but I knew enough to know that I couldn't just buy a plane ticket to Africa and show up and go do my thing. So I Googled it.
I mean, all good things come from Google.
Yeah, you know, I just Googled missions, and a friend had mentioned this place in Australia, and so I looked it up. And then I went there. I just like I remember telling you like.
Yeah, to give a little more perspective of it, like it was a bit story. More than that, but But my sister and her husband, my sister is married an Australian, but she actually did the exact same program that Joran went over. So it's not like we just shipped him off to Australia. Yeah. We had a bit of a better idea, but
well, and I'm really glazing over. But it was like a year internally. It was a year of me really debating like. Because I learned that, like, the best thing I did was tell people I was going to do it. Because, like, even though usually that'd probably be stupid, because the whole year prior to telling anyone that I want to do this thing, I would, every week, I'd, like, get supporting evidence why I should do it or why I shouldn't do it internally. So I'd go to work, and we'd have an awesome week at work. And that would just be, I'd be like, I'm not leaving. This is it. Like, I'm not going to leave this. And then something else happened, not even work or anything, and then I'd be like, oh, I am leaving. That's right, I should go. I should leave. So then I finally signed up to do it in October of 2019. And then they called me and were like, yeah, we don't have something happening. I don't know what happened exactly. They had to cancel it. And I was like, what the heck? Like,
I remember that. Yeah, you were supposed to leave in October.
But that really like solidified it for me. So once I signed up in October and they canceled it, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this though. It's happening. So then I took it seriously, and then planned to leave 3 months later than that. I left in January, and then yeah, and then from there I just started working selling things. I sold the Fox body, which was sad.
It was a sad day.
Yeah, that was.
Sold the truck.
Just started selling things, and I was only going for 6 months. But it's so weird looking back because I knew I only bought a ticket for 6 months. Like I was like, I'm going and I'm coming back, like, you know. But then I knew in my gut, I was like, oh, I'm not coming back for a while. Even though I was like, it's a 6 month program, there's no reason I'm not coming back for a while.
Yeah.
I was like,
the organization he's talking about too is called YWAM, so it stands with Youth with a Mission.
yeah.
And I'll let him keep going, but I just thought it was important that you.
Well, that's the reason I picked them is because they offer a school that's sort of like an introduction to missions. So like I said, you want to do missions, you can't just buy a plane ticket and show up at some country and go do mission work. So like you got to have some kind of structure. And so they do this school that you can do, which is like, they break it up. They would say it's 2 parts of knowing God and making God known. So it's 3 months of like school, which is like you get to learn about all these things that I was hungry to learn about. You know, you get to learn about the Bible, you get to learn about different cultures, you get to learn about perspectives, you get to all this different stuff about God and about worldview, and then you get to go on a 3 month outreach to do it, you know, to do what you've learned. And that's why I went, but I got there and then 4 weeks later COVID happened, so then all international travel, it all got shut down, and that's a different story, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, to talk about, like, I remember having conversations with you of like, man, I don't think I'm gonna be able to leave.
Yeah.
And there was for me, like outside, kind of like looking in, like you had a choice there right in the middle. You could have left. He had an opportunity basically of where before they shut everything down, you could have came home, or you made the decision to stay. And that decision to stay was a really big question mark because you didn't know
How long?
We didn't know. I mean, think back to 2020. None of us knew what was happening.
Yeah. Well, and I was fully convinced that like I was there for a reason. Like, you know, when I had told you, like when I decided to go, when I signed up for that one in October, that was because I visited a friend in Minnesota, and I was at his church, and like I said, I'd been wrestling with this for a year, and during the church, I'd never been there. It was a tiny little church, like it was really cool, really like genuine kind of deal, and I remember praying in my head, like just in my head, no one heard me, and I was like, God, like if you want me to go, like tell me to go and tell me where to go, because and be specific, because I'm tired of wrestling. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. If you want me to stay, tell me to stay and be specific, but you got to do something other than just thoughts or something, because I can't, I'm back and forth too much, you know, both seem like good, both could be bad. And after that, this random girl, like no joke, it's like one of the craziest moments I've had, this random girl I've never met, I'm up in Minneapolis, so I'm not close to home, it's not like someone I knew, and she just comes up to me, she asked about something on my shirt, I think I was wearing like a Billabong shirt or something, and she was like, oh, do you surf? And I was like, no, I live in Kentucky. And she's like, oh, sick, like, do you like surfing, you know, like this? And I was like, I mean, yeah, I've always thought it was cool, this and that. And then she's like, well, you should look into this program called YWAM. I'd already heard about it, like I said, I was already wrestling. And I was like, I had said that prayer 30 minutes earlier. I knew I said that prayer, obviously no one else did. And I was like, oh yeah, that's cool, like, yeah, I'll look into it, you know what I mean? I was like, I've heard there's some cool ones in like California or something like that, maybe I go there. And then she's like, she was like this blonde, like happy girl, whatever, and she got all serious, like dead serious, and looked at me and was like, no, you need to do it in Australia. And I was like, all right. I just said, God, be specific if you want to tell me. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll look into that. Like, you know, and like, I just like walked away, like, what the heck? Like, just like, and then even crazy. So then like, it just shows, man, like, I don't know, my faith's weak a lot of times. So like, I feel like I said that prayer, that girl that never met came and said that. Like, I feel like most people would be like, all right, I think that's pretty clear. But of course me, I come back and I'm like, all right, God, that's pretty crazy. If you really want me to go, give me some kind of sign or something. And then, no joke, like the next day, we get back from lunch, and I won't say their names because I know him and I love him, and I know he'll be upset but everyone's gonna know. But like, two of our friends that we were building a car for from Australia are waiting in the office when we get back from lunch. And they're like, hey, like, good day, like, and I'm like, oh, dang. And then I'm talking to them. I'm like, I didn't really tell them. You might have told them. I don't know. But I didn't really tell them what I was going to Australia for. I was just like, that's sick. I'm actually going to go to Australia to check it out in January. I'm excited to see it, look around. And they answer me right away and go, yeah, we know. We were praying last night and we're going to buy your flights. And I was just, I left and I cried because I was like, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, something's happening right now, and I don't know what's happening, but like I said, I was on this journey with God, and I was like, God is doing something, man. Like, I don't know what's going on. This is crazy. These people flew here from Australia just for 1 week, got here the day after I kind of had this encounter last weekend, said this prayer last night. They're here now saying they're going to buy my flights because I didn't have any money anyway to go. I was just hoping it'd work. Yeah. And like, just crazy, man. And then still needed money to go. It was like, well, the flights are paid, but it costs money to be there for 6 months and do the program. So I put all the money, I sold the Mustang, I put all the money I had into it, and I still was short. And someone randomly called me, and they're like, I didn't send them anything, they're like, hey, we heard about your situation, how much do you need? And I was like, it's uncomfortable to be given to. Yeah. It's something you grow in, and so I was like, well, I need, like, the goal is this much, but honestly, I'm happy with, like, anything, like, $10, $20, and they're like, no, like, how much do you need? And so I was just like, oh, well, I need this much, and they're like, cool, we'll send it today. And again, like, I just, like, what is happening? And so, it's so funny, though, like, so through that process, like, I just kept trusting God, like, it taught me so much about, like, having faith even when you don't feel it. Yeah. Because, like, it wasn't enjoyable. I don't know. Like, I was always under belief God tells you to do something where the good thing is going to be, like, peace is going to be enjoyable. But I was like, man, if peace is the calm, like, oh, this is good, and people say God gives you peace to do hard things, like, I didn't have that. And I was crying. The guy on the plane, dude, the morning I left, the dude sitting next to me must have thought I was dying or something. Like, he's like, this guy must have just, like, got divorced, or he's flying to Australia to, like... He's running, he's an international criminal. Man, I was trying to hide it, and, like, I just remember that plane lifting off, and I was like, what am I doing?
I'm leaving America!
I was like, I just left a job I love, my friends, my family, I sold my Fox body. I was like, what am I doing, man? And I was like freaking out, and I'm like against the window, like, and this guy's like, hey man, you need a drink? Yeah, so anyway, that's kind of the process that led me leaving to go to Australia, was those kind of moments. And you and Brad were awesome. Like, yeah, you guys never were like, you can't go or whatever. There was no hard feelings. It was just total release, which kind of made it harder, to be honest. Like, might have been better if someone was just like, screw you. And I could just like, yeah.
Well, no, for us, like, I don't know, I think I could say it like this. We are a little bit older than you, and we, me and you personally have done so much life together, and I think that, that moment, especially that first little section of life, like, the first time at the shop, you and Brad just became so close, like, like you guys really, really bonded, and for us, we never want to hold anyone back, like we both felt like this meant a lot to you, and like, man, I get like business stuff, whatever. I get it, but obviously you were an asset to the business. You were great at what you did. You had a good attitude. We can go on and on about that, but for us, that doesn't really matter, which is going to sound so stupid. We want to see our friends and our people and all of us live out the things that are in here. And that moment, that's what was in here. So we wanted to do everything we could do to make you feel supported and comfortable to go to the other side of the world. And I hope that we did that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and if it wasn't for working at the shop before that and getting the connections with Australia that I made by working at the shop, like my time in Australia now would be totally different.
Yeah.
Because all those connections have became pretty much some of the biggest relationships I have there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Race cars.
Race cars, they're across the world. So, yeah, it doesn't matter where you are. Like it's common understanding, common bond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened? You got there, the COVID comes, and you kind of get derailed again.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's what I was saying is because of the way I got there, I was very set. Like it was that choice of like we got a thing sent out by all the countries. I was with people from Canada, from South America, everyone that from their country sent this crazy, intense little thing saying you must return home to your home country. But it didn't say it was legal. It didn't say like it's illegal if you don't like. So I was like really torn. Everyone went home. Like the crew of people that I was with doing the same thing, like over half of them left and went home like that day. You know, some places we were really lucky. Australia didn't make us go home. They run these schools in other places of the world as well. And some places it was government law. They had to send all their students back to their home countries.
Gotcha.
So ours gave us a choice and we're like, we can't do the program because we can't do international missions right now. Like it just never expected this. It's shut down. So your choice, like you can stay here and like you can kind of just stay and hang out and volunteer to be like basically maintenance because you weren't allowed to leave the house or the property because of lockdown. So it was kind of like basically all they could think we could do is like, you can hang around the house, you know what I mean? You can do maintenance, you can help upkeep the property, but we don't know what to do. We never expected this. Or you can leave and find kind of your own way. And so I was real torn. And this is where I'm so thankful for my dad because I called my dad and I was like, Dad, like this is one of those moments like, do I leave or do I stay? I don't know what to do. And my dad was just real easy of like, he's like, well, you went there to do mission work. Like you have this hunger that you wanted and you went to do mission work. Have you got to do that? And I was like, well, no. And he was like, then why would you leave? And so I was like,
that's a Marty Berry.
Yeah. I was like, all right, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And so honestly, I'm not trying to get all like crazy depending where people stand, but like, man, for me, I was just day by day, I was just like resting. It sounds weird, but like resting in God, that I was like, man, if I believe that God is all knowing, then this didn't catch him by surprise. So when he did all these crazy things to bring me to Australia, I have to just rest in the fact that it's not like he did that not knowing COVID was going to come.
Yeah. It wasn't a surprise to him.
Right. It wasn't a surprise. Like he knew it even when he had those people kind of motivate me to go. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to stay and see what happens. And then also at the time, COVID they didn't tell you it was going to be 2 years. They said like, oh, it'll clear up in 6 weeks. It'll clear up in 3 months. So every 3 months, you're kind of like, oh, we're about to be done. And then it's like, no, we're not. And then just kept going until eventually you just stopped listening to them and you're like, this is my home now. But the people I mentioned that came and visited, they own a concrete company over there. So then I didn't know what to do. So he was like, well, you can come work concrete. I've never worked concrete a day in my life. And so I just moved 2 hours north of where I started and went and just life changed really sudden. Like I left the missions organization thing on Saturday and started working full time on Monday. And so I just rented a room in Gold Coast, Australia and started working concrete. And I was just until I could figure out what to do next. And I really felt I wanted more. So I was like, I want that depth. And so there was a Bible school, another 2 hours north, that started the following September. This was in like April at this point. And so I was like, I'll just work and save money to go to Bible school. And that's what I did. So in that 6 months, I just, I worked and surfed, and I worked on race cars here and there. A few people heard about that I had worked at Tin Soldier, and I was there, and that was interesting. And then, but so then I did that, and that was kind of that stage. That was during COVID.
Just kind of doing whatever to make it through.
And then in 2020 in September, I started Bible school. That was a year. And then so that was a good way to spend lockdown.
Make you read your Bible. You don't have anything else to do.
Yeah, I mean, I hated school and I didn't want to go to school, but I was like, well, I have to sit around in here anyway. I can't do anything. Like, if there's any time to sit in a class and learn, like, now's the time. So it was crazy because it was like they had this huge property, but there's only 10 students because of COVID. So
really got some one-on-one attention.
Yeah, we had this massive property just to ourselves. Like, you didn't have to see anyone all day if you didn't want to. Like, it was sick. And then they lost that property the next year because there wasn't enough students, but that's a sad deal. But I got it on the last run.
Well, so, okay, to kind of change it up just a bit of what we're talking about, going into the Bible school, right? Like, obviously that wasn't, you had in your mind what you were there to do, which was basically a 3-month teaching. Then you're going to go 3 months out in the mission field. You weren't even sure what country that was going to be, but that was, you knew you were going to do that. And then, you kind of get derailed. You're doing what you're doing, and then you find yourself at this Bible school. What was your biggest takeaway from just being in Bible school? Like,
I think there's a verse in 2 Timothy that says every word is God breathed. And I used to read that and be like, oh yeah, I believe that, like the big ones, like the real punchy one-liners. But the main takeaway is I was like, man, when you understand the background of the the whole thing, the Bible's just so misunderstood. And I think the biggest thing that Bible school taught me was that the Bible wasn't written to me, right? So we read it like it was written to us. We read it and it doesn't make sense, and we think that's whack on like, oh, well, it says this. I don't know how that works today in 2023, and then we don't. It wasn't written to us. It was written from someone to someone else. These are individual compiled letters put together. And so, but it was preserved by God and his goodness and his bigness for us. So that is the biggest takeaway for me to look at it, because then it just gave me, like, when I say every word God breathed, I realized, like, when you understand the background and the context and kind of what's going on in these letters of like, oh, that guy, we know this guy is writing to this guy. What was happening in that situation? And then you can look at it. All of a sudden, every word starts coming to life. You're like, wow, why would he start the sentence with and? It's just the word and. Like, it's all over the place. But because you're like, oh, well, he's connecting it to the point he was making prior, And then it gets real nerdy and complex, but like, it doesn't have to be, but like in Bible school, that was the point. We were like trying to you study. So in the 9-month Bible school, plus the outreach is about a year, but like 9 months, you'd study through the Bible entirely 5 times. So you'd go every verse, understanding. It was super intense, like 60 hours a week. But the biggest takeaway is I was like, man, it stirred my heart to try and make it understandable. Like it gets like, that's why I do what I do. Like, cause so many people, like we all know someone that has been hurt by the Bible or knows people hurting people by like using the Bible to support what they want. But like when you read it in the context of what's going on, you're like, man, it doesn't say that. Like and so that was the biggest takeaway of that. That was worth all of it, just to change my perspective on like, wow, like reading these Old Testament stuff that was happening to Hebrew people way back then, you're like, it's actually not that weird because every culture was doing that, or it was just a law of the time. And yeah. So anyway, I could go on forever on that, but it was like, I realized, I'm like, man, I can't read this with my 2023 perspective because it wasn't written to me. And so that brought a lot of peace to me, answered a lot of questions. Really a lot of wrestles with God. I still wrestle with God. You know, the funny thing is that like, you study the Bible, you think it's going to answer all your questions, but it just brings more questions.
Yeah.
So like you answer a lot. You're like, dang, that's awesome. But then it just goes deeper. And like, but I think the way it impacts you, I really believe in that verse, man. Like it's God-breathed, it's alive and active. Like it sounds weird talking about words on a page, but it's really not the words on the page. It's what those words are saying that like I just saw in my life that when you spend that much time, which I'm so fortunate to have that time because regularly you can't.
Yeah, that's a really, to be able to intensely study something. I mean, would you say you read it 5 times?
5 times, yeah.
Front to back. And reading it 5 times with guidance. You know, you have a teacher, you have someone that's, you know, helping you with a lot of the historical side. I mean, obviously you did a lot on your own, but just someone that is their job is to bounce ideas off of is incredible. Yeah,
so it just goes so deep because you just get so much perspective on like, that's really interesting point. I never thought of it that way. And then it was cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So obviously overall glad that you.
Yeah. I mean, I would, a lot of times, like, so the first introduction to mission school I told you about, people come to that. But a lot of people do that as like, I don't want to hate on them. I wish they wouldn't do it for this reason because, you know, but a lot of will come do it as a gap year program.
Okay.
Which is cool. Like, you know, it's a good way to spend your gap year, but it also maybe it's a misunderstanding of what the purpose of it is. It's not for adventure. Like, you know what I mean? Adventure's part of it, but like, anyway, they always finish that, and usually they do it so they're like 18, and they always ask me, like, should I do – the school I did was called SBS, or School of Biblical Studies, and so they're always like, should I do SBS? And I never wanted to go to school, all that stuff, but I always tell them this thing that I realized on it is I was like, well, I always ask them, like, do you plan on being a Christian for the rest of your life? And if they say yes, which I hope they would, I'm like, well, then knowing more about the Bible would never be a negative.
Yeah, it's impossible. I mean?
Yeah, going to seminary, like university to be a pastor, that's a different story. I have no idea what that's like. But doing this 9-month school to just nothing but the Bible itself, just study what it says and try and understand the language and all this stuff, like the background, I couldn't find any reason on why that would be a negative if I planned to follow God the rest of my life.
Yeah. And to your, like my story's obviously different. I went to Bible school for a small period of time. I was actually, you know, I was in school to be a pastor. And, you know, that year and a half that I did that's a whole nother rabbit hole of stuff. But like, it gave me such a better foundation to leap from, you know, and I think that's what a lot of people miss on their journey if they do decide, like, you know, Christianity's for me. Their foundation that they're jumping on is more mush.
Yeah,
they don't have a clear platform to leap on because they don't really know what they believe or why they believe it, or, you know, like you're saying that, you know, that all the different historical reasons and things that of the Bible that I don't know. It's just, you know, I think people need to read more. You know, right? Like that's probably really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know. I love your journey. I'm appreciative that we get to be a small part of it in the story of what it is and what you're continuing to do. You know, we have a lot of conversations of where you're going, why you're doing it. Joren is engaged now, ladies. He's off the market. This Australian lady just swooped up that hillbilly right out. She's like, man, you are. Yeah, I mean, wow.
I like looking redneck.
Yeah, I like the way you talk. Bye, J Bird.
See you, J Bird.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do, like, you got any closing thoughts for this one, and then we'll try to film another one while you're here about how people can probably get more involved with what you're doing. But yeah, any closing thoughts on our discussion today?
I mean, it's just, man, it's crazy. Like how much race cars influenced that whole journey. Like I'm a kind of person that I feel like God really speaks to by using things I already know, so he uses things I know. And then I'm like studying the word and I'm like, what? And he connects it through things I know. And I feel like just sitting here in a race car shop, seeing what you guys have built now, and looking back at that journey, which seeming at the time didn't seem like a lot at 19, I was like, I just wanted to learn to weld so I could weld on my motorcycle. I was like, I didn't think, but it led to doing what I'm doing now, which seems so unrelated to race cars, but it's really so similar because I use the illustration of a race car all the time. Is that like, it makes it so understandable for people that I'm like, building a race car, everyone thinks that's cool. But then I have realized, I'm like, man, it's just helped me so much because I understand the process of building a race car so well. And then when walking with God, it's easy to think that because I've chose to walk with God, that it's all going to be done right away. But that I've realized it's just like building a race car, that it takes a lot of work. It just takes time after time of figuring it out, all right, trying different things, and it's just like having a race car. You don't build this sick car and first hit down the track. It's the best out there. Yeah. And I don't know, it's just so cool to me, even in this conversation, just realizing how much God has used that time of just being in the shop on my own, listening to music, welding race cars, to give me a foundation of understanding of that process, to then pair it with this journey of trying to understand who he is and how to live a life with him. He's just made it so much better because he's been it's just like building a race car. You try this, you do it, and then you see all right, you're learning as you go.
Yeah.
And that's Christianity. You don't just accept God and be like, it's all done. Now I'm perfect and now I'm good. And a lot of people might think that, but they're wrong. It's just either you're not perfect, you just work it out as you go, just like a car. And I don't know. So that's probably the closing thought, is just that it's cool to how God has linked the stories. I for a long time wondered what does that have to do with any of this? I'm in Australia teaching the Bible. What do race cars and all that time I spent learning that have to do? But I realized if nothing else, it was just for me to help me understand how it works. And yeah.
No, it's a really good, I'm sure you guys have picked up on Motivational Monday. It's an easily relatable thing. I think, if you choose to read the Bible, even if you're not a Christian, it doesn't matter. We say this time and time again, you do not have to believe to belong. I hope that if you don't have a Christian worldview, you can still take things that Joran said today that can be applied to your life, right? And Jesus talked in the Bible in parables, and the parables that he said were relatable for the people that he was speaking to. And that's why for us as this community that loves race cars, I think that's why God uses them, because it's an easy way for us to understand what's happening. It is, and beyond that, I think Jesus himself was a craftsman. Yeah. He understood what it was like to build and have detail. And that's a whole another rabbit hole. But we'll definitely have to chat again. Do you got any closing thoughts, Rick, before we wrap it up?
I enjoyed hearing the story. There's a lot that I learned about you personally. It was cool.
Yeah. So I think next time, I don't know how Rick has structured it, but the next podcast will be Joran again, and you'll get to see more in depth of what he's doing. This Australian lady that has swooped him off his feet. Yeah. And then how you can get involved to help what they are doing personally, and which that would mean a lot to us. So, and we'll figure out an easy way for you to get involved with that. So we love you. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you later.